Excellent. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar, Transforming Drug Development for Precision Medicines, a Practical Path from Evidence Generation to Reimbursement. Precision medicine and individualized therapies are no longer theoretical frontiers. They're becoming tangible realities that demand new approaches to evidence, regulation, and access. Recent draft guidance from the FDA introduces a plausible mechanism framework to support development of therapies for conditions with known biological causes when traditional large clinical trials aren't feasible. This represents a significant shift in how highly targeted, genetically informed treatments may advance towards approval. Today's session brings together leaders from industry, regulatory science, translational medicine, and patient advocacy to explore practical strategies across evidence generation, data platforms, regulatory engagement, and payer alignment, all in service of making precision therapies more predictable and sustainable. We're honored to have Dr. Klaus Romero, CEO of Critical Path Institute, moderating this discussion with our expert panel. I'm Jennifer Kendra, the Global Strategic Partnerships Lead here at CPATH, and will be moderating our Q&A feature today. So moving to just a quick little bit of housekeeping. Before we begin, this session is being recorded and a replay will be shared after the event. Please submit your questions anytime using the Q&A feature, and we'll address questions throughout the discussion. All participant lines are muted to optimize audio quality. So with that, it is my pleasure to turn things over to our moderator, Dr. Klaus Romero, who will introduce our panelists and kick off the conversation.
Thank you, Jen, and thanks everyone for joining. This is such an exciting time. I can't even express how pivotal this moment is in not just the transformation of lives for people in need, but the materialization of a vision that has been in the making and that we stand to make real, not just a vision. I'm joined today by actually four amazing leaders from across the ecosystem. Kate Dawson is the Senior Vice President for and Head of Therapeutic Development at Biogen. We go way back. She's a neurologist, drug developer, leader. Our paths have crossed many times before, and she is definitely an advocate for these types of collaborative environments that can transform drug development. Allison Martin is the Director of Regulatory Science and Policy for Sanofi North America Global. Our paths have also crossed in the past. She brings the regulatory perspective from industry. Julia Vitarello, she is a true visionary. She was touched very personally by a very rare disease that transformed her life, and that transformation has led to today. Not only as an advocate, but as I said, as a visionary, and now the CEO of Everyone Medicines. But the picture that you don't see on the screen is actually Janet Woodcock, who needs no introduction, as a true visionary leader, and thought pusher for new ideas and transformation. So with that, let's get started. I'll start with Julia. I wonder if you can walk us through in a short statement how your journey has been and what this moment represents in your journey and that of so many lives that can be transformed.
Yeah, thank you, Klaus. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this panel. This is obviously a really, really big week for me. My daughter Mila was diagnosed with a rare form of an already rare condition, Batten disease, 10 years ago this year. And 8 years ago, she became the first person in the world to receive a medicine for one person, in many ways kicked off this new field of individualized medicines that we are speaking about today. I think early on, I realized, thanks to the hundreds of scientists and doctors that invited me to be part of their discussions, that they were all doing incredible work and that the science and the technology was going at lightning speed. So we, had the ability to find patients like my daughter and to develop highly precise, individualized medicines for many of them, more and more of them by the day. That the science, we have the science. What we didn't have was the system, right? Our system was designed or evolved for population medicine for large diseases. But the problem is that with genetic conditions, as many of you know, they are inherently small, right? So we have maybe a dozen or a few dozen that are very large that fit in the normal, scalable, sustainable, commercially viable pathway. But for the 10,000 small or rare conditions that affect, I think 400 million people worldwide, of which 200 million are children, my daughter being one of them, it doesn't fit. So making one medicine for one disease at a time, having one approval for one medicine for one disease, it doesn't work for nearly all genetic diseases. So that really led to, I think, many of us, including those of us on this panel, pushing from how do we move regulatory wise from product by product to a process approval? How do you capture a large population, not by disease, but crossing across dozens, if not hundreds of diseases by creating a standardized process for developing them and approve that process as opposed to individual medicines one at a time. So I think that's what got us to the very exciting news released by HHS and FDA this week with the plausible mechanism pathway. I think we're not 100% there, but it's a great start and a big win. And it lets us have this conversation today, which is now what? Now that we have the science and the regulatory barriers rapidly coming down, not only in the US, but in the UK. I would say MHRA is very advanced at this as well. Now, how do we actually connect the thousands, tens and thousands, 100,000 millions of especially children with genetic conditions, but all patients, to the incredible technologies today, because there's more to do. So I hope that helps set the scene. And this is a really exciting time to be having this conversation.
Yes, fantastic, Julia. As one of my board members likes to call it, it's a cosmic alignment of factors. So this is great. I will go to Janet next. Janet, you've not only been a visionary for this whole thing and supporting Julia's vision and driving us at CPATH to keep pushing the boundaries of what collaborations can achieve, but you also have some very, very important thoughts on what this moment means for agility for industry. So Janet, please go ahead.
Sure. Well, let me start kind of at the beginning. I think that the children with serious and life-threatening or life-ending rare diseases should be where we start. But really, this is opening up a new era of medicine. And people need to think future-wise, which, I always do, right? Okay, so we start here and we learn here because this is the most urgent medical need and ethical imperative that we start here because we have these tools, right? We got to figure out how to treat these children. Once we do that, though, we realize that there's a genetic basis to many diseases. If we can figure out how to do this, we're going to be scaling up. So I don't think eventually we need to think of this as an N of one. We need to think of this as a starting point with, the ethical imperative driving us, but gradually expanding the way we do this. The second thing I want to say, though, is I agree with Julia, the great step by the regulators. I've been talking to the UK people. They're moving along too. Actually, EU is thinking about this, India, China, everybody's thinking about how they're going to embrace these new technologies and allow them to flourish, because it is very clear, at least to Julia and me, we're totally aligned on this, that this has to be a commercial endeavor to a great extent. We need the academics, we need their help, but we need to scale this to treat all these children We can't just say, okay, next 10 years we're going to treat 50 kids or maybe 500. Wow. Well, there are going to be thousands and thousands dying if that's the case, if we do it that way. So that's really important. But the second thing I want to say is we shouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past. So I think the plausible mechanism guidance has some of that in it. Okay, we don't need RCTs. We need to do other things. You know, we need to use other methods and so forth. But at the very end of that guidance, there's a discussion of data sharing. And the mistakes of the past, as we all know, okay, is we are not advancing the field of translational medicine the way we need to because all the data is behind silos. That was all left to industry, all of that, biomarker development, clinical outcome assessments, everything. And so we don't have it. CPATH has been working along with some other groups, you know, to pull that data out, to transform it, to make it usable. But let's not make that mistake this time. Let's share the data from the get-go. Because even like the gene therapy, okay, we saw there was a big outcry about some fatalities with Sarepta's gene therapy, okay? But nobody knew the denominator. Nobody knew what was going on with other gene therapy development programs. There are fatalities in those programs, but it's all hidden. So I really make the plea that we need to think about how we can share as much data as possible, evolve the standards rapidly, do it in a transparent manner so that we're not stuck. We heard a few weeks ago at an FDA Duke Margolis RISE meeting that the toxicology requirements probably for some of these ASOs are way out of date based on current data. But who's putting those data together? Who knows about all the data? Well, maybe the FDA, but you know, they're pretty overwhelmed. We can't rely upon them to be updating those data and developing new standards. And that's critically important because that's one of the rate limiting steps, both financially and time-wise in getting ASOs to these children is the toxicology requirements. We should be all over that. But we aren't because we don't have the data to be all over it. So, Klaus, that's my second point is first point, this is just the beginning of a new way of doing of medicine, of medical treatment. Okay, that's number one. Number two is it's not going to move successfully as fast as it should with agility unless we share the data and learn iteratively from these experiments. Thanks.
Thank you, Janet. That's such an important set of constructs for being able to materialize the vision that not only you had, but Julia had, but also the vision that is captured in the guidance document. And as you said, I give such an amount of credit to the regulators, FDA, for including such language in a guidance document because it's really that component that is going to help us make sure that through collaboration we integrate all the data and build the solutions that are needed. I'll go to Kate next. You've been a drug developer, a thought leader, but also a neurologist that has seen the effects of these devastating diseases. Can you help us connect the dots of how you see this guidance and this vision being transformative for your role, wearing all those many hats?
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me to be part of the panel. And I just want to say, you know, that my opinion here is my own personal opinion as opposed to the one of the company that I work for. And as a neurologist, you know, not to digress too far, but, you know, when I chose to be a neurologist now many years ago, people, of course, said, why are you going into a field where you don't have any opportunity to help patients? And the beauty of my career is that I've seen that arc and how it's changed. And, you know, certainly within the programs that I've worked on have been privileged to be part of ASO programs that really transform patients' lives. So I've seen it. I recognize there's a huge unmet need as a drug developer at a biotech company. This N of one study really is not something that we can entertain from a business perspective. However, I do believe that these patients deserve a platform, a process, a way to get access to therapy, and that we could all benefit. I noticed Janet talked about the data sharing. That stuck out to me as well at the end of the guidance. That's really, we need to do it in a way that is protects all parties, but we have to share the data because I think there's so much we could learn from these N of one studies that we might be able to then apply to other larger populations. The only way we're going to be able to move the entire population forward quickly is by really capitalizing on the data in totality as we do these studies. So, I'm a big proponent of data sharing as well. Obviously, there's a lot of devil in the details there. But I do believe that this is an opportunity that we have, and we need to seize it in order to, A, make the lives better for patients that are in these ultra rare conditions, with the hope of somehow also moving it to less rare conditions in the future.
Yes, thank you, Kate. Allison, you have the perspective of regulatory in pharma, and we talk about the regulatory science innovation ideas, and this seems to be one of those pivotal moments in that direction. Can you share a perspective on your take from that vantage point on what the guidance represents and what the future can look like?
Sure. And thank you for having us today. This is an exciting discussion and hopefully the start of many discussions in this area. So as far as the guidance is concerned, we're still looking at that and digesting it. We're going to take input from across our organization and our different subject matter experts because it is, it's a meaty topic. I will say when it comes to data sharing, that's something that Sanofi is very much in favor for. It's a core commitment of Sanofi. And one thing that we want to build on as well, though, is it's not just the sharing of the data. It's going to be sharing of knowledge, experience, learnings. What does good look like? What does efficacy look like in this certain population? And it's not just going to be industry. And I think that's something that we need to keep in mind. It's going to be industry, it's going to be academics, it's going to be patient advocacy groups because they hold a lot of this knowledge. And it's going to be regulators because we all need to share our understandings, our knowledge, our learnings, in addition to the data in order to really advance this field at the scale and urgency that it demands.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so as you can see, this is a pivotal moment, and so the takeaway messages that I've captured from what everyone has said thus far is this stands to transform an entire paradigm for how to do drug development and how to think about the evidentiary considerations for efficacy and safety. Starting, of course, with the context of technologies that can be designed today to address at a very personalized way, multiple ultra rare conditions. But this also provides what Julie and Janet were indicating, the foundation for what could then become not just a plausible mechanism framework, but a process that is the components of which are outlined in the guidance, but that we can build together because no single entity can do this on their own, into a set of well-defined evidentiary considerations, data resources, insights from the data, and multiple tools that can be used to scale this so that, to Kate's point, this becomes a feasible business model for industry, and we tie the access to the patients for these technologies. We tie regulatory innovation. We tie drug development innovation with something that can be truly scalable. But as you heard from everyone, it's all about the foundation for all of this. It's all about data sharing, and that's an important part of the guidance, which I'm kind of glad it's at the end because it's very easy to find. It's not buried anywhere in between the pages. So, Bree, why don't we go to slide 10, because I'd like to cover something about also not having to reinvent the wheel. The reason why we've been talking about this and collaborating with Julia and Janet and Allison and Kate on this behind the scenes, leading up to this moment, is because at CPAD we've been able, through the support from FDA, through the contributions of data from industry, especially those individuals that really believe in data sharing, like Kate and Allison, and through the contributions from academicians and patient advocacy groups, we've been able to build a data and analytics platform that currently houses 722,000 individual records across clinical trials from industry, observational studies from academia, patient registries from patient groups, and electronic health records. We are ready to put this data platform to use to benefit this collaboration. The foundation of it doesn't need to be rebuilt. We can still use the mechanisms that we have to facilitate data sharing. To Kate's point, the devil's going to be in the details. But this is about the collaborative nature of this collaboration. And let me just touch. Let's go to slide 9 for 1 second. It's the data need to be integrated, but they need to be transformed into actionable insights. And so that's another key component of the vision for this collaboration. And now we can have another round of thoughts from our panelists on how they see the data being transformed into insights as the guidance outlines, and what are the lower hanging fruits that we can start tackling through data sharing and collaboration to materialize the vision on this guidance. Janet, you want to, yes, please go ahead.
All right. Well, the guidance lays out multiple steps in a process, as Julia said. That what it envisions is that you use a platform technology, right? Which is, say, ASO, certain backbone, certain chemistry, right? Or a certain gene editing technology, right? And you don't change it. You try it in different people. And the steps you go through, you determine, you have an algorithm that you start standardizing for what are amenable mutations, okay? How do you design that? How do you design the intervention to match that? How do you test it in vitro? Because the guidance calls for an in vitro proof of concept, right? Which means you need to show in vitro that your intervention does something to the target, right? That's reasonable, okay? But are we going to have 1,000 flowers bloom? Some of that is going to be proprietary. Some people will hold their algorithm close, but can we learn from this? Then it envisions that you do toxicology. Now there, I already mentioned, okay, we've got to figure out a better toxicology screen for these things. Otherwise, it's going to be prohibitively expensive to treat patients, right? Because if you have to test every single variation in sequence, pretty soon, like they say, you're talking about real money, right? So can we share data? Can we look at what the binding, this is probably due to do off-target binding, right? Can we develop collective assays and then give them to the regulators so they can accept them? They can look at the data and accept them. So can we look at the toxicology, is the current toxicology, is it predictive? The only way we can tell is by pooling everything. And as Klaus said, we don't show, or somebody said, maybe we don't show the data to others. We don't put it out in the public, but we have it inside this box and we look at it and we analyze it for these questions. Similarly, the clinical, some things are going to be more successful than others. Okay. How can we have rapid knowledge turns that in turn inform regulatory standards? Because the regulators are not going to be able to evolve as quickly as the science. They're too understaffed. They have too many other tasks. This isn't their job, really. What I'd love to see in the future is a standard development type organization that works with all of this, as was said, with the academics, with the companies, with the patients to evolve the standards as we go so we can make rapid knowledge turns and really drive this field forward. But we ain't going to do that unless we have the substrate, unless we have the information. So that's what I see. And post-market, the same. Okay, were there adverse events? What were they? Well, if they're all siloed everywhere, we're not going to learn. We're going to have we'll have all these registries and post-market follow-up and all this stuff, and it'll all be buried in some files and so forth. And that isn't what this field needs. Field needs transparency and it needs knowledge. So that's where I really see this type of machine that transforms all this information into actionable tools operating over time. However, we have multiple barriers to overcome, mainly getting people to do this, to share the data. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Julia, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think Janet and I are on the same page. So we talk about this like every day. So I fully agree with what Janet said. I might add to that is that, the RISE meeting on individualized medicines a few months ago, which I know Klaus, a bunch of us were at, was really interesting for me because I lived my own experience with my daughter and saw what was meaningful and measurable, even though we got to Mila too late. I saw incredible benefit from Millicin, her drug. I've spoken with dozens of other parents that have had children who've received individualized ASOs since. So I've heard anecdotally some of the crossover, different diseases, different mutations, similar types of medicines. And I've heard that everyone's seizures went down, that generally kids are sitting up better, which means they can swallow better. Sometimes that means they can hold onto a toy better, but these are anecdotal, right? And then at the RISE meeting, I heard from the FDA that there had been, 80 something individualized ASO since Mila in the last 8 years, and a huge amount of doubt that these worked. And this isn't to point any fingers. This is just to show the discrepancy between what the clinicians and the parents were hearing and then what the regulators were hearing. And one of the things, having had a follow-up meeting with the FDA afterwards, that was very clear is that these one-off Hail Mary, research, sell cookies and lemonade and raise millions of dollars efforts, like, first of all, are not sustainable or ethical, but they also aren't generating evidence because there has been no feedback loop. There's been no mandate to have the iterative learnings come back, right? So this is the opportunity now with this new guidance and then pushing that or pulling that even further towards process approval, which is what we need to get to, is we can't have a process approval unless we have a standardized way of collecting, inputting, sharing that data so that we can actually see in a way that's meaningful to regulators and payers, what does evidence of effectiveness look like? And I'm now in the position of CEO of my company, and I'm in this position for one reason only, which is that science isn't the problem. Regulatory is not really the problem anymore. We have to make a commercially viable model. So I need to prove that's what I can do in this big picture is can we get companies to survive and be able to also share, a decent amount of data and set a precedent, because that's what we're hanging our hat on is transparency is we've got to be able to share a certain amount, and that needs to be mandated for every company that's going to get process approval, because you don't have to come back to the FDA eventually when you get that. That's sort of the concept that we're looking towards. But you do need to share a certain amount of data so that we can see patterns across evidence of effectiveness and safety, and then correlate the preclinical, with the clinical data that we're getting. Otherwise, we're all going to be in silos, like Janet said, and there will be no learnings, and therefore there will be no process approval, and we're not going to do this at scale. So it's all needed,
Yes, thank you, Julia. Kate, you've seen it also happen in other areas. but at a different scale, but nonetheless in an impactful way. Can you share some of your experiences in transforming data that can be integrated in such a way that it can be transformed into actionable drug development tools that have changed paradigms?
Yeah, so I just want to start with like a general statement. I think it's amazing to be at a place where the science is ready, but the system is not. But maybe this is the first step, right, to getting the system in place. And I want to reiterate what's already been said. We have to create a learning system. That's really what we need to do in order to, transform as many lives as possible. And there's been a lot of, there's a lot of back and forth with FDA about what are the endpoints you should use. Janet's already spoke about the toxicology, which is certainly seemingly a challenge and not always something that you can foresee of how the interaction is going to go. So I believe that, gathering this data in a way that does create a learning system, and all of the points that have been already been made, we need to learn about the safety so that, perhaps we decrease the burden on the next person trying to develop so they can use the data as a whole as a way to bridge more quickly. The endpoints, there's so many diseases, for instance, that have similar types of features. They may not be the same disease, but they have similar, seizures. We'll take that. Is there a way that we can look across many diseases using this N of 1 to learn about endpoints and which ones are most effective and really predict, a benefit to patients? So I think there's a lot to learn, but we do need to create a system that allows us to pull out these insights, because if it does stay siloed, the N of 1 study is not going to teach us enough to progress the field.
Great. Thank you, Kate, because that just ties a lot of points together that are captured in the guidance, but that are actually feasible to materialize if we pull together as an ecosystem in this pivotal moment. Allison, you heard Janet and Julia talk about standards, and Kate talk about the transformation of data into insights in a meaningful way from an industry regulatory standpoint. What's your take on again the kind of innovations that can be materialized if we use the guidance as a way to guide these types of collaborations?
So I think, pulling from what Kate said, I think this guidance is a great first step. I think we are much further down the road today than we were actually on Sunday. Having this guidance and this having FDA even recognize this as a path to commercialization, I think is a big first step. We've talked about scaling a little bit and how to, make sure that it doesn't stay just an N of 1. And one of the ways that this guidance addresses that is when we have regulatory predictability, it allows for investment. So one of the things that's going to be key here is seeing how FDA actually implements this guidance. And, we've talked about sharing learnings and knowledge and know-how and, sharing what good looks like, sharing, how can you characterize natural history in an ultra rare disease or a disease with, a lot of heterogeneity when the patient is their own control. I think there's a lot of questions that we still don't have the answers to, but we're a lot further down the road than we were 2 days ago. I think, beyond that, in order for this to truly be realized, is we need to see the FDA fully embrace platform technology. We need to get to a place where, we're able to, once, this is blue sky scenario, but once we're able to, have FDA bless the kind of modality and delivery mechanism and route of administration, that we aren't, having to approach this as a new product every single time we're going mutation by mutation. But, as others have mentioned, we're able to basket and do this at a broader level. And I think, you know, making sure that platform technology is in place and sharing the knowledge and learnings, having the predictability from FDA in this area is going to be really crucial in order to allow us to scale and take it beyond an N of one.
Well, on that note, Klaus, I've got a question from the group. A major question regarding commercial viability is the small size of these populations, right? Achieving a CE ratio that meets reimbursement agency thresholds is very difficult. Oop, I lost it. Sorry about that. So can we speak to that in terms of the small populations and the cost is addressing that, or the cost that is the implication of the one by one and what a platform can achieve?
Sure. I mean, this is the importance of what Julia and Janet and Allison and Kate have stressed. The notion of using the guidance to generate the foundation for what can become a viable and actionable process approval mechanism that transforms a paradigm. But Julia, do you want to comment on or Janet? Yeah, please go ahead.
I'd like to comment because, okay, I agree. That's a commercialization and the potential is a huge issue, as well as reimbursement. Okay. The guidance gives us one thing, which is the platform technology. So it overtly says you can modify sequences within the same technology, and that would be within the same IND and approval, right? So that's step A. That is platform technology process approval. That's an umbrella concept, okay? Different sequences. What we also need, I think, is what Kate was talking about. We also need to be able to study closely related diseases within the same platform, okay? Say, neurodegenerative diseases that share similar mutational problems and are called different diseases, but actually what you're targeting is the mutation in a gene, okay, with a certain paradigm. And that is the basket piece of this, okay? That will increase the population a lot if that we aren't there yet. The agency isn't there yet with that concept. That's not in the guidance. They talk about a disease, but frankly, the modern definition of disease is changing. And I like the example of dropsy. We just don't have dropsy anymore. We have all these subcategories, right? And there's a lot of interest, like in cancer, and going back to the mutations. Okay, and the kind of mutations, and you're treating that. You're not treating the histology necessarily, or alone. So I do think there are more steps that we need to take, but we have a big open door now, and we need to go through that door with the platform technology, with the process approval, with the umbrella trials, and hopefully we can start broadening that from there. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It does. And I want to stress an important point there, Janet. So the question also touches on the fact that as you say, this is the first truly meaningful, actionable step to get to the vision that you're outlining. But importantly, when that vision starts becoming truly material, think about the new paradigm that this generates when you don't have to necessarily think about a IP filing and then years of development, but an IP filing and a very efficient use of existing knowledge to get to a point where people can benefit from the solution. That alone stands to really transform. As I said in the beginning, this is such a pivotal moment that it stands to transform a lot of paradigms. I don't know if anyone else from the panel wants to comment on that question that we got from the group. There's others, and we can move to those after that. But anyone care to elaborate? Yeah, please, Julia.
Yeah, as first of all, for me, Monday was so exciting because I had already heard from the MHRA, which has been, I want to underscore, has been incredible regulator at understanding the need for commercially viable path. So that already has been like opened the door in the last few months. And then to see this guidance come out that was on individualized medicines and it said for industry. Like we have never seen the word industry coupled with individualized medicines. It's been like cookies, lemonade, doctors dropping everything they're doing for 2 years and becoming drug developers. Like that's been the story. And luckily, thank goodness, that's what's gotten us to where we are. So huge thanks to Tim Yu and all of the others that have done this. But obviously, when it's targeting industry already right there, there's a recognition that these medicines need to be approved so that they can be reimbursed, right? So that already catches the attention of payers and CMS and others, right? I think the only way that we're going to ever get to the place, so just to piggyback on what you said, Janet, is like get to the place where these are commercially viable and there is this commercially viable pathway is with what you're doing right now. Like you have to have a way to gather like not just the safety data, but the evidence of effectiveness in a central place that supports reimbursement. So seizures is like a really obvious one. I saw my daughter have 30 seizures a day, 2 minutes, and they went down to nothing, right? With Millicent, even at a very progressed state, right? And I hear that from other patients. You have to have these cross learnings and these patterns. We can't see the patterns anecdotally. We got to see them actually in a true database, right? And I think the setting the bar high is going to be important, especially for reimbursement. Like you need there to be the same caliber of data that's in there. And that's going to be the tricky part here because everyone's going to be collecting their data like in a different way. So I think this group and Klaus, what you and Jen and everyone are doing here is bringing together the groups that are going to be collecting this data, industry and non, by the way, academic as well, is and setting the bar of like what is a minimal data set that's needed for reimbursement, not just like for the fun of it. Like if it's not for reimbursement, it's just never going to get to kids. So I think creating that minimal data set and what the caliber of data and the standardization is going to be like that's when the devil gets in the details there. Like if we don't do that, it won't be reimbursed, you know.
I think that's an excellent segue to some of the other questions in the chat here, which is how do we establish some confidentiality allowing shared data? Because that's, and there has a sentiment of a barrier in the past, and what kind of reassurance is necessary to move forward?
Yeah, so I'll take that to begin with, and then I'll pass it on to the panelists. So as you saw on slide 10, if we can bring that up again, the building a data platform that is able to integrate 722,000 records across clinical trials from industry, observational studies from academia, patient registries from patient groups, and electronic health records, as you see here, takes quite a bit of effort. It's not just the technology of building the data platform, having all the security components in place and the functionality pieces and the ontologies and the data standards. It takes those aspects of ensuring that everything follows the respective global regulations on data privacy and data security. And this is something that we've done. Now we look at doing it at a different scale, which is very exciting. But the question of data privacy in ultra rare diseases is a really important one. And because this platform was originally funded by the FDA, that question of privacy is very, very much top of mind. The other piece is that the data contributors in our data sharing process keep absolute control as to the level of accessibility that they want to have for their data. But all the solutions coming out of the data are public source and publicly available. And that's what Janet was referring to. But this question is important because one person that has seen this happen is Kate. Kate, can you comment on your experience in actually seeing this materialize?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been, as you pointing out, Klaus, there's been a number of times when Biogen has contributed data sets to this platform. And obviously, we don't do that capriciously. We look at it very carefully. The protections in place that Klaus, that you and your team have created are ones that are very important to us. And additionally, I think to your point that you made is it's the fact that we can have a decision on what we want to share and how it's shared. So I think there are enough protections in place that we see at times there's a real benefit to the field of making sure that we make data available for others to be able to look at and utilize to generate insights.
Excellent. Jen, I think we have another question.
Yes. Yeah, so a number of years ago, there were oligo safety working groups, which were cross big pharma consultation groups, and they generated white papers for oligo safety guidance. Are there any learnings from these groups that can be applied to the current initiative?
The answer is absolutely yes. There's no point in reinventing wheels unnecessarily. That's why the Envision collaboration is a collaboration that is intended to serve the ecosystem. Certainly, the FDA is going to be part of that collaboration, like they have for the multiple public-private partnerships that we coordinate. Certainly, industry of all sizes. You have representation here from the essentially the three a sample size of three types of sizes of companies, and this is what that the Envision collaboration is intended to provide: the academicians and the patient communities. We're going to have a dedicated webinar pretty soon with that part of the ecosystem. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel, and getting in those insights is certainly something that can further get us started. The intention is to integrate all the pieces of knowledge, including up to the experiment level data and the preclinical data and the patient level data in all the clinical data sources. I see more questions, Jen,
Yeah.
that we should
Yes,
cover.
so absolutely. So moving to a family and patient question. Rare disease families already carry a significant burden. How can we reduce the data collection demands placed on them so that pursuing individualized medicines doesn't feel like an added strain? And what role can digital health technologies play in meaningfully offsetting that burden?
I'm happy to take a stab at this because I get it. I've been there. That's a great question. I mean, one of the reasons why Tim, you and I started Everyone Medicines is honestly to create a model so that parents, the burden doesn't fall on parents to have to raise millions of dollars and do everything themselves. And my hope is that Everyone Medicines creates a model that spurs the creation of many other medicines. We have hundreds of millions of patients. I don't think we're going to be able to take on hundreds of millions of patients. So we need to have many companies and academics in the space and hospitals working together so that we relieve the burden from parents. The idea is I can say that our company's working with Great Ormond Street Hospital to treat our first patients in the UK. And that family, like the burden was lifted from them. So the hospital took on their part, the company took on their part. In many ways, the hospital found the patient, treating the patient, monitoring the patient. The company came in with a drug development experience and the funding, right, to do this. And then we actually hired a great mother of a DMD mother who started a company, and she's working with all of our patients directly. So really guiding them, it would have been hugely helpful for me. I had to sort of figure this out on my own, is like, wear these wristbands and ankle bands, wear this monitor, at night when you sleep. And like, this is how you record it. And it's made as easy as possible so that the family does have meaningful, measurable data coming in, but they're guided by the company, the hospital, and everything. They don't have to do it on their own. It's pretty simple. We're learning, but we're trying to make it the collection of that data as easy as possible. And they very much weigh in on what is meaningful. And the hospitals weigh on what's measurable there. So that intersection happens because of the parents. So my hope is that we don't see parents having to take on that burden anymore, and that it's a shared. The pie was shared with half me and half Tim in his hospital, and now I see that pie sharing amongst hospitals, companies, the doctors, even the regulators. In some sense, they're taking on some of that. The payers will take on some. It's a shared responsibility now.
If I can add just one point to that, I'll just say that, some of these patients coming into the office is an experience that almost changes how they are going to be perform on all of the assessments. So the more that we can make it easier, reliable for parents or caregivers to gather some of this important data in the home setting, I think really would behoove us to focus there.
I agree, Kate, completely. And I just want to add the video capture that we have available today allows you to do a lot of that at home so that you don't have to go into the hospital, which is so difficult, and also capture that kid on a random day that happens to be the day you go in, which doesn't make sense for anyone. So there are now some really cool tools that allow us to, measure that meaningful measurable at home. It's a great point.
Fantastic. Okay, another important question. How important is establishing more small-scale GMP manufacturing capabilities for affordability and scalability?
Yeah, so the manufacturing piece on the scalability of the manufacturing piece, Janet, you've shared some thoughts about that in the past. Do you care to share those with us today?
Well, gene therapy is one thing that as the vector problem, it's expensive. There's a collective at NIH and, public-private partnership trying to deal with that. Many of these other nucleic acid technologies, at least though, are going to be at least I've heard, and I've been told by various manufacturers that the next level up is going to be basically a piece of cake. That using continuous flow and other types of technologies, and I won't go into them because maybe they're proprietary or whatever, or secret or something. But nucleic acid is actually a little different that's because it's our genes and so forth. It goes together like Lego blocks in a way. And of course, you have to do it in a certain sequence and everything. But these mad scientists out there are figuring out ways to do this that are incredible. So I think depending on how long the whatever intervention is, like how many nucleic acid lengths it has and so forth, that scales the challenge. But I have heard for all of them that if this becomes, a broader field, there'll be scalable technologies that should significantly lower the cost. So I'm told. Okay, I've heard this before, but I have seen it in the small molecule space. It is definitely true. It's just there's been slowness to adopt it in the small molecule space because there's so much spent sunk capital in all these big vats and all this kind of stuff. But here we're talking about a new field. So hopefully we will bring high technology to this and be able to manufacture things speedily and without high cost.
Thank you, Janet. I think that is a fantastic answer for that question. But of course, I think it was Kate that mentioned that additional devils are going to be in the details, but it's through the power of sharing data, and not just sharing data because there's a vision, but because it's an anchor. And this guidance from FDA is such a valuable anchor for the starting point for this envisioned collaboration. I'm looking at the clock. I know that we reserved more time, but I don't want to just torture the audience. There will be additional questions that have been captured that we will follow up on in written format. Let's just go to 13 because there's a couple of upcoming events that I want to make sure that we highlight. The next one, please. Yeah, thank you. So we're planning a follow-up webinar to this one with the patient community and the clinician community. So stay tuned for the details on that. And then we have the next RISE workshop with Duke Margolis March 30th. The materials are publicly available. We'll look forward to seeing everyone there. But then there's one that is not on this slide on September 23rd. The DIA work group on oligos is going to have a meeting. We will make sure that we also help connect the dots to that meeting as well. So with that, let me just go through the panel for any final thoughts. Let me start with Allison.
Sure. Well, thank you again for putting this together. I think it's a great start and hopefully the start of many conversations that will take place on this. I'll say from the industry standpoint, I think we see a lot of promise here. There's a desire to partner and data share and really fully realize the promise of individualized therapies and developing them in a way that can be scalable and applicable to not only other rare diseases, but more common diseases as well. We were encouraged by the FDA guidance, and we look forward to how that will be implemented and understanding better what good looks like from the FDA's perspective. So I think there's a couple more steps there, but we're very encouraged, and it's a very promising time to be in this area. So thank you again.
Thank you, Allison. Kate?
Yeah, fully appreciate and second Allison's points that she just made. I'll just say, again, the guidance that just came out, we are still, internally looking at that very carefully for the opportunities. It is a great anchor to start from. And I'll just say, together we can go faster. So I look forward to partnering and continuing to lend my voice to this conversation.
Thank you, Kate. Janet, Kate said something that resonates, I think, with you and me. Not only can you go farther together, but in a lot of ways, you can actually go faster. Parting comments from you, Janet?
Well, let's do it. Okay. We've done this before. We can get this done. The path is actually clear. The obstacles are clear. So let's get this done. That's my theory. Thanks.
You got it. We are committed to getting this done. Julia, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I mean, this is an incredibly exciting time. I think this is, we have the chance here to help solve what feels to me like a global health crisis, especially with hundreds of millions of just dying and sick kids alone. And I think the challenge here for everyone, and that this means literally everyone, from doctors and scientists to companies to regulators to payers to anyone you can imagine, legislators, is we do need to work together. And I think the setting is right here to be able to set standards so that we can move away from one medicine at a time, which will take 2,000 to 3,000 years if we want to cure all the kids. And in the meantime, if we don't do that, it is a moral imperative and everyone dies. So unfortunately, we can't wait any longer. So I think this is the chance of, can we actually step up and share not just data, but learnings like others have said, and start to create sort of a standard setting organization that complements the new regulatory path. And then together you start having this look a little bit more like surgery. In many ways, Mielison fell between sort of traditional drug development surgery, and that new sort of world of interventional genetics or genetic surgery is where we're going, whether we like it or not. And so it's on us to see, can we do that now and all collaborate, or is it going to take 10 or 15 years while everyone dies? So I think we're set up to do it now. So this is really exciting. And thanks to CPATH for rallying all the various groups together to do that. Now we actually have to do it. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Julian. Thanks, everyone. I think we're going to reflect back as this being the moment where a major transformation took place in medical product development. So let's take this journey together. Everyone is welcome. We'll follow up with additional information on the other webinars and the rest of the meetings, but more importantly, the collaboration itself. So if you have additional questions, additional thoughts, feel free to reach out, and we'll open our doors for the collaboration pretty soon. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a good
Scott.
day.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.